Wizards of the Coast just released a slew of new Magic the Gathering bans, and these bans hit multiple formats, but no format is as strongly impacted as Standard. They went ham and yanked multiple cards out of the format all at once.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The Magic Historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. My friends, I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered to talk about an absolutely crazy ban announcement. Wizards of the Coast has pulled out the ban hammer and is playing whack-a-mole around town today. Standard has just been plowed down. So let's dive right into Standard and what Wizards of the Coast has to say about it. Up on the screen, you are going to see the 3 cards that have been banned. Alrund's Epiphany, Faceless Haven, and Divide by Zero. Now, Divide by Zero is the big surprise for people here, but let's dive into what Wizards of the Coast has to say. I'm going to add in my own thoughts on these as well. So, when it comes to Standard, Wizards of the Coast says, in the October 2021 Banned and Restricted update, we announced no changes to Standard in anticipation of Innistrad Crimson Vow's release soon following. Since then, we've heard community feedback that there hasn't been enough change in the metagame over time. And this is true. Honestly, it feels like Innistrad Crimson Vow has had pretty much no impact. So Wizards of the Coast was sitting back hoping, hey, maybe the next set will fix our problems. No. Standard's still on fire. So basically, it goes on. While a good number of decks are seeing success on the Magic Arena ladders, and each has strengths and weaknesses against the other, the most played archetypes have remained largely the same over the past months. Big surprise. As such, we have a set of changes targeted at some of the top decks, including the Blue-Red Epiphany and other blue control decks, Mono-White Aggro, and Mono-Green Aggro. Our goal is to create some churn among the current top decks, open up additional angles from which to attack the metagame, and leave room for more experimentation and innovation with the release of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. To me, this almost partially reads as, we don't really see that there's anything in Kamigawa Neon Dynasty that is going to push the needle, and if we don't do any sort of bannings, we're looking at a situation where we may have 2 standard sets in a row that have no impact, and it's a bunch of cards from Kaldheim and Strixhaven that are causing problems for the format, right? Now, Alrund's Epiphany is a really obvious choice as a problem, but Wizards of the Coast can't help themselves. We saw this with Nexus of Fate, right? Extra turn cards you have to be really careful with, and repeatable turn effects are something that really suck to run into. And Alrund's Epiphany is great at setting up like repeatable multiple turn effects, right? Because Alrund's Epiphany, sure, it costs 7 mana. That is a hefty price tag. But you can get a 1 mana discount by foretelling it. And when you foretell it, you also shove it off to the side in exile land where your opponent literally can't get at it. So if they happen to be playing like discard or have some kind of answer that can deal with it while it's in your hand, guess what? Out of luck. Not only is it removed from the game right now, I also get to play it for less, right? So Alrund's Epiphany is a take an extra turn that gives you multiple either attackers or chump blockers tacked onto it. To me, this is a card that should have been obvious from the get-go. What are you doing making cards this powerful? I mean, I do love the artwork on it. It's a very, very funky card. But Wizards of the Coast says, Alrund's Epiphany is a card we highlighted in October announcement as having the potential for negative impact on metagame diversity. While blue decks with powerful late-game spells can sometimes do good work as natural predators of mid-range decks, a deck that chains together extra turns can be particularly difficult to stop and frustrating to play against when it represents too large a portion of the metagame. Actually, at the game store that I used to play at many years ago, there was essentially a house rule at the store where you weren't allowed to create infinite turn setups. So you were allowed to take 2 turns in a row, and then you had to let your opponent take a turn. Now, obviously, these are the older era of Magic where you can have those kind of friendly little rules. Nowadays, you can't really do that for tournaments and stuff like that, but multiple turns in a row has always been a big problem for Magic. And they say right here, the foretellability of Epiphany makes it even harder to interact with, as one of the traditional answers to big spells is hand disruption. We made an incredibly resilient, incredibly powerful blue card. We've only been making the game for 30 years, guys. Come on. So it continues. While not entirely dominant throughout the Magic Arena ladders, especially in Best of 1, Alrund's Epiphany decks have been particularly popular and successful at the highest levels of competition and in tournament play. Like, remember, this was already a problem in October. And now we're in the next year, and they still hadn't solved the problem. Their plan of doing nothing apparently didn't work. Maybe if we don't put out the fire will naturally go out, because that's how fire works. You know what I mean? It's that kind of a feel. Anyways. To create space in the metagame for more mid-speed and slow archetypes, and to address the often frustrating play pattern of chaining extra turns, Alrund's Epiphany is banned in Standard. So, surprise, surprise. Even without access to Alrund's Epiphany, our data gives us concern that other blue control decks are poised to reduce metagame diversity by shutting out certain types of strategies. In particular, Divide by Zero. This card is very interesting to me because I only really clued in 2 days ago as to what a real problem this card is. So I'm going to tell you what Wizards of the Coast has to say, and then I'm going to share my experience as well with this one, because it was very illuminating when it kind of like slammed into my head a couple days ago. In particular, Divide by Zero gives those decks flexible early interaction that is especially effective against slower, more powerful spells and permanents. The ability of Divide by Zero to cover a variety of angles of attack frequently gives these decks enough time to enact and protect a powerful endgame soft locked state, all often using Leer, Disciple of the Drowned, or Hullbreaker Horror. I mean, come on, you make these insanely powerful blue creatures where, hey, look, you can play spells from your graveyard with no problem, or look at me, I can't be countered. By the way, I put spells and permanents into your own, like your opponent's hand. Like, these things are insane, right? So it says, we're choosing to ban Divide by Zero to make blue control decks less effective against other mid-speed and slow decks, and force them to be more intentional about which threats they choose to prepare for. So this is them essentially admitting that Divide by Zero was a massive mistake. And like I said, that actually became evident to me a couple of days ago when I had the scenario. I'm basically playing these big creatures. My opponent plays Divide by Zero, and he's just got toolbox access. When you look at what the Alrund Epiphanies deck uses, right, you end up going, okay, you've got cards in there that will get you land and life, so they can speed up your plan and slow down your opponent's aggression. You've got cards in there that will refill your mitt. You've got lessons that will summon up a big army of creatures. Like, you literally have this insane scenario where they just have the answer to everything. The tempo loss is absolutely absurd. You go ahead and play a big 5 casting cost spell, something like that. They send it right back to your hand, and then they go, oh yeah, by the way, I'm grabbing the best tool for this situation. It is just incredibly powerful in terms of being a tempo thief. But it flies under the radar because your brain goes, it's 3 mana. That's so expensive for a bounce spell. You can't target tokens with it. It has to hit something that costs 1 or above. But once you see it in action and realize just how good it is at stealing tempo while you can use the other ability to just go discard and draw. Like, you don't even have to use the lesson ability. But the lesson ability, targeting lessons, is where it becomes incredibly powerful, because the spell not only replaces itself, but it replaces itself with whatever you need most out of your toolbox options while really stutter stepping your opponent. It's an instant that can be played during their turn. Like, Divide by Zero is actually a surprisingly powerful common, and it really did take a while for it to click in my head. But it was a couple days ago where I went, this really feels wrong, man. And once you surround it with all the other cards, it gets really out of control. But anyhow, that's the one that surprised a lot of people. I, for one, would have been surprised if this ban had happened a week ago, but my slow brain finally put it together. Now, let us continue on. The most winning decks on the Magic Arena ladder, and among the most popular, have been mono-white and mono-green aggro. While each owes part of its success to preying upon blue-red Epiphany decks, right? If you have things like your Divide by Zero, if you bounce a cheap little creature and I can recast it, you really didn't steal much from me. So those kind of decks did pretty well against the Epiphany decks. But both these decks have high win rates against the field, especially against many of the less popular decks on the fringes. Faceless Haven represents a lot of the power of these monocolor aggro decks by virtue of being efficient on its own and providing resilience against creature sweepers and targeted removal. To weaken these two aggressive archetypes without fundamentally changing their core game plan, Faceless Haven is banned. Faceless Haven is like really, really solid. You can slap it into any deck. It activates off of snow basics, and Wizards of the Coast made basically no punishments for playing with snow basics. So if you are playing a monocolor deck, or any range of different decks really, Faceless Haven is an easy include. But when you're playing a deck that has a mega aggressive strategy, then the Faceless Havens add as a really nice resiliency backup. Oh, do you have board wipe? Great, my thing's not animated. Get wrecked, chump. Do you know what I mean? So they can handle certain levels, but it really does help you step up the beefiness of your deck, and ultimately feels like too powerful a card. You can see it with Alchemy. They've already nerfed some of these cards, right? Alrid's Epiphany got nerfed. They nerfed Divide by Zero, actually, in a couple of days will be nerfed to only be able to hit permanents that, if you want to learn, I should say, you can only hit permanents that cost 4 or less to get to learn with it. So that restricts its power somewhat, but it is still a very, very solid card. And Faceless Haven's getting dropped from a 4-3 down to a 3-3 in Alchemy, so they're making all these different kinds of tweaks. But you can see with all the cards that they have to tweak the power downwards. It's like, man, you're making these things overpowered, right? Now, turning to Legacy, when it comes to Legacy, they're only banning one card there, and that's Ragavan Nimble Pilferer, right? Surprise, surprise, the card is super powerful. Came from Modern Horizons 2. So Modern Horizons 2 release introduced several high-impact cards to the Legacy card pool, and since then, they've been watching the metagame develop, listening to the feedback, same as usual. Although recent tournaments haven't been conclusive in terms of Blue-Red Delver's overall win rate, the deck has represented a very large portion of the metagame and posted many top finishes. Magic Online League data shows the Blue-Red Delver had an overall 56% non-mirror match win rate, and more than twice as many trophies earned as the next highest archetype over the past week. So this deck is clearly just absolutely dominating. So we've heard much discussion of the tendency of games to snowball from an early Ragavan Nimble Pilferer backed up by protective spells like Daze and Force Will. Really? You mean a hyper-aggressive, mega-undercosted creature that gives you resources is problematic? It's like, guys, I want to take a moment to address something here in case you guys aren't aware. What's happening right now is exactly what Wizards of the Coast wants to happen. Like, you may be thinking, oh, this is like a fail for them. This Ragavan, what's happened here, is exactly what Wizards of the Coast wants to have happen. They want to make cards that are big enough to make a splash in other formats, right? And then you buy up a bunch of these, you use them, they sell off all the product, and then after the product's gone out the door, they go the way Holgak and go, whoa, you know what? I mean, we know we've been making cards for 30 years, but we didn't realize that making cards that were so aggressively powerful would warp formats. Not like it's not our plan to get into these formats and warp them, right? I mean, that's how you make your way in. You warp the format by creating Ragavan. Then, oh, we banned Ragavan, but we already sold all the product. That sucks. You know what? Don't worry, though. Modern Horizons 3 is coming. We'll give that to you next year. We'll probably cover it, though, by calling it a Lord of the Rings set or something, but you'll still have that set. We'll still make busted stuff that's intentionally designed to go into other formats and mess them right up so that everything shakes up. You got to buy more cards. You got to get more product. Like, if you guys don't remember, they stated their goals with the fire design, right? Like, this is all to plan. This is perfect. They made a card that was strong enough in a new set that it made its way into legacy decks, had enough of an impact to warp the entire format. They made a bunch of sales off the boxes of Modern Horizons, got to sell them at double the price tag, created a secondary market value of $100 for Ragavan, and now they get to do a rug pull and get right back to it again. Hey, guess what? We're going to make some more cards that you can use in these old formats. Isn't that great? Think about all these Unfinity cards that we're making. Didn't put an acorn symbol on that one. Try it on Legacy. Oops, did it break Legacy? Don't worry, we'll ban it when, hold on, when does this product stop selling? We got it all out the door and banned. Right? Like, this is how Wizards of the Coast operate. Be aware that this is intentional. If you think that this is just like, when it comes to stuff like Ragman, if you think it's just, oh, they didn't know, man, when it comes to Legacy, they know. This is intentional. Make your purchases accordingly, my friends. Anyhow, so they've gone ahead and banned Ragavan, obviously. They say they're going to keep an eye on how the legacy format continues to evolve. And then when it comes to Historic, Blue decks in Historic continue to remain strong. So Memory Lapse is officially moving from the suspended list to banned in Historic. It's just, the suspended thing most of the time just feels like Wizards of the Coast goes, we don't really want to give you wild cards for these yet. So we just want to kind of put them over to the side. Maybe you'll forget about them and whatever else. Like, if you could just give us money and we just kind of ban whatever we want. And, hey, we gave you this new special Strixhaven version. No, you can't use it. It's, I don't know, man. That to me is like whatever. And then when it comes to the unbannings, they're actually unbanning Teferi Time Raveler, but it's the rebalanced version that they're putting into Historic. So don't get excited thinking you're getting the old Teferi back. It's a new version of Teferi where instead of saying your opponents can only cast spells at sorcery speed, it says they can't cast spells during your turn. And they made them cost more mana. So it's just like a nerfed version. Meh, whatever. Anyhow, let me know your thoughts, my friends. I'm pleased to say that the next installment of the Urza lore is virtually ready. Running around trying to get a lot of stuff done. And speaking of which, if you're interested, I wanted to talk about Mark Rosewater's teaser list, but it looks like we're not going to get time to probably do it in a video because spoiler season's about to launch. So what I intend to do, if I can find the time, is do a live stream over on my Hatcher channel today where we go through Rosewater's teaser list. So I can't 100% guarantee it's going to happen, but I will leave a link down in the description for you if you want, and in the comment section if you want to come on by and hang out. So, thanks for coming by. Today, let's do some common letters. If your name starts with an S or a G, you may comment today. Everybody else, don't you dare comment, like, or subscribe on this video. But you may come back next time to hang out, and you may click on the links on the screen for some more enjoyable times. Goodbye for now.